broadcast. Oh, I can close this window, really? Okay, okay. And how do I know when to start? I'm trying to test my volume. Okay, it's working good. All right, well, I'm just going to go ahead and get started and hope that we're ready to go. Um, so, for social work exam prep, the important thing to remember is that you're going to be reading the question, and then from there, you're going to be figuring out what the best answer will be. Now, it doesn't mean that the best answer is the one that you like. It doesn't mean an answer that you even think is good, but it just means it's the best of the answers. Now, one tip that I've never really revealed, I don't think, on YouTube, and you all will be revealed it tonight, is that if it's a first question, so if the question says, what would you do first? Then something you can always do after you try your other kind of go to True Blue kind of tips with the very late and the making sure that all of the people and issues in the question are also in the answer. Another go to tip is to look and see if it's first question, you look at the answers and you rank them in order of what you would do first, what you would do next, what you would do if the world were to end tomorrow, and then you eliminate the bad answer that's usually left over. So if it's a first question, then you would say, okay, well, I'm going to look through all of the four possible answers and I'm going to put them in order, time wise. What would I do first? And if it's a next question, then you look time wise. Okay, well, I would do this first, but I would say this next. So if those are the next words out of my mouth when I order them, then that is the answer for the next question, for the question that says, what would I do next? Now, if the question says, what would be the most important thing to do, or what would be the best thing to do, then I'm going to look at the answer from among the answers. That would be what I would do if the world were to end tomorrow. What would I do to make sure that I am keeping my boundaries yet helping the person to cope in some way or helping the person with resources in some way? So that would be the next thing, um, or that would be the best thing that I would do. But more important than even providing help, if it's a best, should, primary, or most important kind of question, then I would be looking to do whatever is essential to keep my boundaries. So I'd probably clarify my role or say no, perhaps, to whatever the request is from the client. And then I would go ahead and still try to help them in some way. So I would maintain my boundaries while also helping them. That's the best of all possible worlds. And that's why it's a best answer to a best question. So now, if we were to look at other tidbits for the exam as you're studying, and I know there's a lot that you'll be studying, but these are just some recall things that I think I've neglected to cover before, and I wanted to reveal them to you tonight to say thank you for waiting so long for me to come back live, and for you, Ebony, because you're a wonderful supervisee and about to take the exam. So, yay! Okay, so one tidbit is uh, these are just recall and tips. So, symbolization. This sounds like a made up word. I did not know this word really existed, but symbolization is not a made up word. It's actually a word that means when an image represents some part of reality. So, to symbolize something would be to take, like, let's say, a lion, an image of a lion, and say that lion represents bravery to me. That's called symbolization. So, if someone comes into you and says, you know, my mom meant so much to me that I decided to paint a picture of the beach we used to go to when I was a child. So, my best memories of my mom were at that beach. So, I painted a picture of that image. What does that mean? Or what is this an example of? The answer would be symbolization. Another recall item, since in the new DSM, with this exam, we now use DSM 5. Since in the new DSM 5, there is no such thing as global assessment of functioning, there's no GAF score anymore. How do we determine global functioning? How do we determine whether the person's doing well socially, legally? Are they a risk themselves? Occupationally, how are they doing? So when we look at global assessment of functioning or global functioning, we no longer use the GAF. We do not primarily, anyway, use the mental status exam. We use the mental status exam for determining competency, capacity, looking at ruling out psychosis. But for global functioning, mostly, we're going to use the WHODAS. I love saying this, WHODAS. Ah, it's the World Health Organization Disability Assessment Scale, I believe. I might have made that up, but I think that's what it is. WHODAS. So that is now the new scale used to assess functioning in an individual. There it is. Now, the test might ask you about different kinds of treatment you would use for different kinds of issues. We know that they like cognitive behavior for adults. We know they like behavioral therapy for children. We know that they like dialectical behavioral therapy for personality disorders. We know they like group for bereavement, children with disabilities, parents of children with disabilities, and addictions. But what else do they like for addictions? Well, they like aversive conditioning or aversive therapy for alcohol. They like aversive therapy for gambling. And in essence, what that means is that whenever a person thinks about drinking or a person thinks about gambling, that they would bring up some kind of aversive stimuli. So it could be a picture of their child crying or a picture of them in jail that they can think about in their mind whenever they think about using that substance. Well, another aversive stimuli would be antabuse. Antabuse is a medication that is given to make people feel sick whenever they use alcohol or tobacco or start feeling like they're tempted, like they have a craving. So, antabuse is the answer to those kinds of questions. Now, one way to remember that is ant means antagonistic, ant means against. Abuse, well, that's abuse. So if you're ant abuse, then you're against abuse. So antabuse is a medication against abuse of alcohol or cigarettes or whatever the substance might be. Okay. Another kind of tidbit, something I haven't addressed before, there are many behavioral techniques. Many behavioral techniques. One of them that we don't usually talk about is successive approximation. Successive approximation is when you reward someone with small steps along the way to your actual goal. So if your goal is for them to tie their shoe, then you would reward them as soon as they lace up their shoe. And then the next time they go to tie their shoe, you would reward them only when they crisscross the two laces. And then the next time they go to tie their shoe, you would reward them only when they make a knot. And the next time, only when they make a bow, and so on. And they also call that shaping because you're taking little approximations and adding it up to the ultimate goal. Okay, so beyond that, we have other behavioral techniques. And I built a better diagram. Sorry, I have allergies. For being able to determine punishment from rewards. Let's see if I can find it here. Punishment versus rewards. Trying to find it, sorry. Oh dear. I'm just going to have to go through it from the beginning. Bear with me. So, this is the part 2 addendum to my usual material that I give with the 5-hour workshop. This is additional material that you can purchase separately now. But for our purposes, we're going to just get right to behavioral theory. If we can get to that. It's not in this one. Hold on. Well, you know what? I'm just going to explain it because I don't want to go too far off course here. But basically, punishment is a behavior technique that involves pain or some kind of discomfort. So the best way to remember what punishment is to remember punishment is some kind of pain. And the idea is that we want to stop the behavior. And reinforcement is a reward. So remember, reinforcement is a reward. So we have RE for reward, and we have RE for reinforcement. Okay, so rewards and reinforcements are the same thing. And the idea of those is to add to a behavior. Add to a behavior, make it happen more often. Punishment is pain. Now, it may not be actual pain, but it's definitely unpleasant. And the idea of that is to lessen a behavior, to subtract from a behavior. Now, within those categories, there is positive punishment and negative punishment. There's positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. So the positive and negative does not mean good and bad. Positive doesn't mean, oh, good, and negative is bad. No, negative means you're taking something away. Okay, so taking something away. Positive means you're adding something. Okay, so When you look at this, rewards, we want to increase the behavior. So a positive reinforcement is one that adds something in order to increase a behavior. Okay? With me so far?
Yes.
Okay. A negative reinforcement is when you take something away in order to add to a behavior. Taking something away in order to add to a behavior. With punishment, the idea is if it's positive punishment, then you are inflicting some kind of pain in order to decrease a behavior. And negative punishment is when you take something away to decrease a behavior. But the idea with punishment is always to decrease a behavior. The idea of reinforcement is always to add or increase a behavior. So, positive reinforcement gives someone something to increase a behavior. Negative reinforcement takes something away to increase a behavior. Positive punishment would be what? Yeah. Good. And then negative punishment. Perfect. So what is a positive punishment? Would be like shock therapy, like shocking you whenever you get the wrong answer. Yeah, or slapping you. Spanking. Spanking is positive punishment. Um, what would be negative punishment then? Time out. Yep, exactly. Yep, time out. You don't get TV, mister. Right? Shouldn't have swore at grandma. Negative punishment. Perfect. Love it. You're a pro. All right. And then another tidbit is hmm, this is just one that I learned, and I don't know if it'll be on your exam, but I learned it recently and I thought, that's a good thing to bring up. There are some antipsychotics that cause a granulocytitis. I don't know if I'm saying that right. A granulocytosis. A granulocytosis, whatever. Okay. Um, it causes a condition in the cells. So CYT is cells. Gran usually means small. Granulo, small. It causes, um, I think, low white blood cell count, and that's Clozaril. So Clozaril is something that can cause that to happen, and it happens to be an antipsychotic. Antipsychotics are pretty heavy hitting. So lithium, for instance, usually is something that you want to get your blood checked every so often. Haldol causes Haldol, which is an antipsychotic, that causes tardive dyskinesia, which is shaking sometimes. And shaking is usually dealt with by giving someone Ativan for anxiety, and in this case for shaking. Um, but I just wanted to add that in. That's another antipsychotic kind of secondary reaction. And then one just thing that keeps coming up over and over when I'm tutoring people is this idea that, I've said over and over again that when you read a scenario, you want to first look to see if there's an emergency going on. And if there's something physical going on, something medical going on, then you want to address that medically by referring them to a doctor. Or if there's something that could potentially be medical going on, then you want to rule out medical. Now, I didn't mean that you yourself would rule out medical. What I meant is you would rule out medical by referring. Refer. Rule out medical. Give me 1 second. Hey. How are you? Sorry about that. It's always exciting to bring this down. Good, how are you? Yes, I am. Thank you. No worries. No worries. Have a good night. Bye. Bye. All right. So, what do you think about that? I am live on television getting visits, live visits. How about that? So, I apologize for that, but it's nice to have wonderful neighbors. So, all right. So, the idea of ruling out is you want to refer in order to rule out. So, since you're not a doctor, if someone has enuresis and you want to rule out the possibility of kidney problems, if someone has a headache and you want to rule out the possibility of an aneurysm, refer them to a doctor to do those things. Doesn't mean that you can do it yourself. And another tidbit, just something else to keep in mind, is that you definitely also want to stay where the client is at. So if a client comes in and they're having problems with money and they tell you that they're really concerned about making ends meet, and then you find that, oh my gosh, their child's having difficulty in math, and you try to talk to them about math and how their child's doing at school, then you're missing the boat. So if there's a scenario with a family, they have multiple concerns, then you have three basic things that you can do. They have multiple concerns. One, you can validate that they sound overwhelmed. That would be one. And when I say multiple concerns, I mean like three concerns or more. So if three concerns or more, you could do one of three things. Validate. You could help them prioritize, right? What would you like to work on first? You've got lots of things going on. Or you just stay where they're at. Find out what they want, what their primary concern is. What's their primary concern? And then just stay where they're at. Okay? Otherwise, there's a mismatch and you're not serving your client well. Okay, so here's some more tidbits. Medical necessity always has to be met. So if you're serving a client and they have insurance and the question asks you something about putting the client back in the hospital, perhaps, or wondering if they could stay longer at the hospital or if they could get more sessions paid for. Anything to do with insurance and medical care or insurance, basically, has to prove that there's medical necessity there in order to get it covered. So, medical necessity means, does the person really need that medication? Do they need that level of care? Not just do they need care, but do they need that level of care? So, if the question has a purpose, like it says, what would you say to Mrs. Jones in order to help her understand medical necessity? Then the answer should match the purpose of the question. So the answer would say something like, let her know that she's finally stable physically, and so now she's free to go home. That's some kind of medical necessity explanation, and that would match. It would not be, tell her that she's a really strong person and wish her well, because even though that's nice and that's validating, it's strengths based, that is not going to meet the purpose of that question. So, number one, on the test, always remember, if there's a purpose stated for the question, if it says, what would you do first for the purpose of, or what would you do first in order to, then that means you need to match your answer with the question. Next thing, if medical necessity is involved, that means, what is the level of care that we really need for this person? And that's a level of care determination of some sort. And then with regard to other administrative kind of procedural things, when there's a scenario and a person doesn't want to leave your services because they really want to hang around for longer, they feel like you're doing a good job, and they don't have any problems anymore, they've met their goals, but they really just want to hang out and be your friend, have coffee, uh, maybe even just check in once a month. What would you do? What would you say to them? Well, it says right here, you're going to discharge when they've achieved all their goals. So you're going to say to them something like, I know that we've had a good experience working together. You've made all these gains, you've got all these skills. I am discharging you now because I believe that you can do this on your own. I have faith in you. It's not a punishment, it's in order to show you that you can do it. So we should discharge when a person's achieved all their goals. If they haven't yet achieved their goals, then we can hold on to them a little bit longer. Or if the goal is now maintenance, so if the goal is now maintenance, then we can continue to see them. But notice we would have had to adjust your goal in order to make it maintenance for that reason. If they have a new problem, then we can continue to see them and make another appointment because they're having a new problem. We want to assess it. But if they don't have a new problem, then we need to discharge them. Okay, and now here's another term. It's just a memorization kind of recall thing. Dichotomous. Dichotomous means two ways of going about it. So dichotomous thinking means black and white thinking. Very black and white, very simplistic. So if I were to ask, or if the exam were to ask, what kind of disorder is often characterized by dichotomous thinking, what disorder might you say? No, it's a tough one. They're over 18. They're only allowed to be diagnosed over the age of 18. Personality disorders. So, personality disorders are almost always characterized by black and white thinking, impulsive action, but definitely black and white thinking. So, mostly borderline would be what we might think of as dichotomous. I love you, I hate you. Black and white thinking, all or nothing. You're with me or against me. It's always or never. Role discomplementarity is a mismatch in some kind of role expectation. So, two people are newlyweds, they get married. One is a woman who believes that a woman's place is in the kitchen, that she should be making dinner, raising children, homemaking. And then the other person believes that a woman's role should be at work and at home, and that she should bring home as much money as her husband. And that is coming from the husband who believes that. Well, when they get together, if they're having a clash, it's very likely it could be role discomplementarity. They're at different places in terms of the way they're thinking about their role. So your goal would be to work on bring them to the same page. Unlikely to be on the exam, but just in case. And then finally, if they ask about developmental stages and what happens at what age, what should they know at certain ages, then one thing that's a big distinction between usually very young children and older children is an imaginary friend. Usually, imaginary friends come out in a pre-operational stage, which is basically preschool. And especially if they've moved around a lot, they haven't had a lot of real, actual physical friends because they've moved around a lot, maybe in the military, something like that. And they've never really had one best friend, then their imaginary friend can become that for them. And then it's um, uh, program evaluation and outcomes evaluation. This is a bit tricky. They're going to ask you on your exam questions about research, but not a lot of research, just a few real direct, hit you over the head kind of solid questions. They'll probably say, you yourself um, have given out this survey to multiple clients because you want to do a program evaluation. And you ask them questions like, were they satisfied with the length of time it took them to get in to see you? Were they satisfied with the length of services? That's program evaluation. So, program evaluation is an evaluation of the process with which services were delivered. Program evaluation is a scaling of how well did the program processes work. Were they efficient? Did I get in right away? Did they answer my questions when I called them? And outcomes evaluation is more client oriented. Did the client improve in the way that I would like them to have improved? Or in the way that they would like to have improved? And the best intervention, like I said, is the one where you're given permission to do treatment. It's like, finally now I can offer treatment. Prior to that, no. Okay. All right. Questions so far? Okay, cool. All right. And we're going to finish up in just 1 minute. Just want to make sure I finish these extra tidbits. Okay, discharge planning. Discharge planning is major on your exam. It's a big crux of things. So, discharge planning for an adult with no family, they just came out of a psychiatric facility. They don't give you any more information, let's say that's all you know. They're an adult, they have no family, they just came from a psychiatric evaluation. And of course, because they're in a psychiatric unit, then they're going to be getting some kind of treatment for a major mental health issue. So, fourth thing, this is a best question. What would be the best thing to do? Oh, but by the way, you know, this is for the purpose of successful re-entry into the community. Maybe they were put to the side, maybe they were disabled in some way. So, what would be the best thing to do for this person for the purpose of successful re-entry into the community? Pretty hard, right? So, the answer usually involves something like collaborate with resources in the community, connect the keywords in the question stem to the answer. So, what would be the best for the purpose of successful reentry? Anything that uses the word entry. So, if there's a word in the question that's also in the answer, then that probably means it's a good answer. Right? And we're going to collaborate with the community to make sure that that discharge happens so that we can continue to have a connection with that person. They would probably say, uh, who would you who would you partner with to make sure that their discharge goes smoothly? Well, in that case, I would not partner with family if they have no family. Um, Another scenario, what if someone doesn't believe they need help anymore and they've been discharged? The psychiatrist gave them a discharge. They show you the paperwork. Oh, yep, they were discharged. Okay, they're right. You call the psychiatrist and say, well, what did you want to have happen after this discharge? Oh, well, I just figured they go home. Basically, that's the way it's usually written. We're the ones saying they need more. They need to practice before they get home. Yeah. So, um, so just know that if they come in and they're an adult, they have no family, then we're not going to talk to a family member in order to discharge them, because that would be a violation of their rights. Um, so I would probably release them to their own self, just release them home, maybe send in an aide like once a day to check on them. Or if they really have a lot of problems, then have someone else come to watch them all the time around. But the exam probably mostly is trying to get used to the idea that uh, someone can be discharged from a facility and still not have everything they need. So we better go ahead then and discharge them to someone else's care, someone who will, take care of all of it. And yeah, so um, I don't think they're gonna trick you too much. No, they just want you to know that you can't just keep a client forever just because you like them, and just because they're homeless. You have to have a good reason and a plan for them to be able to be on their own. Okay? All right. So that's discharge. Oh, and if they don't understand their discharge paperwork, then see if you can find a family member who does understand it, or delay the discharge till they can understand it. We don't want anybody agreeing to things that they don't really mean. That would be worse. All right. So I know it is 10:08, so I'm going to let you go, but does that help at all? Uh-huh. Oh, yes. How to read it. Sorry, I forgot. All right, so it's a pretty quick tour. So here's what you do. When you first go on Versal, there's going to be a username and password that it asks for. Don't use anything other than what you want to. So you're going to use your own established username, your own password. You make it up. You don't need me for that at all. Okay? And then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to see this right here, which is a little bit about us. And then um, there's this learning objectives, you know, learning, 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 learning. We're always learning. Introduction to the exam. So now you're more in the thick of it. Diagnosing, which is with the flashcards and all that stuff we already did. Here is some other psychological theories. This right here, this pile, CBT, Kohlberg, yeah, all that. Yeah, that's all. we're all together. Um, Kohlberg, take him for an example. Ah, Kohlberg, let's see. Yes. So Heinz dilemma. So they're probably going to ask you to go through and understand like the basics. So Kohlberg is moral theory. So you think about getting coal in your stocking if you're not good at Christmas time. And their conventional wisdom, conventional thinking would say that you don't wear white shoes after Labor Day, right? So a conventional person will not wear white shoes after Labor Day. They think, they think that's above and beyond. Just trying to make sure. I mean, there's a million theories, so you can go on and on forever, but uh, so anyway, that's how you go through the theories. And then there are some flashcards within theories too. So there's like Erickson's Cradle to Grave. You know, I would, you know, love to be an expert on that. I would love to tell you I am, but I'm not. But you can go through the phases, and then when you go through the charts about what you think it means, there's these little flashcards that will flip over for you. So, and instruments. But yeah, basically that's how it goes. And then meds and other things are really cool. So meds, macro issues like administration and more. And more usually means anything people dump on them, but you know, um, it'll work. Uh, okay. Um, you'll be able to see that. Um, drugs cheat sheet. If they start asking about drugs and what to memorize about them, you definitely will find that you want to know about what detox looks like. And usually, Haldon's probably, I mean, cocaine is probably the most addictive, yet also not hugely bad. All right. And then there's mixing and matching. Okay, so this is your times test kind of thing. And then you would just go over here and you start, and that's Prozac, and that's anxiety, that kind of thing. So you just go one after the other. I mean, antidepressant, what I said. So then you would swap them to the proper one, like that. Right? Let's see, I did that one. And just trying to make sure I'm not missing anything. All right, that's about it. And then, of course, you're going to go to ethics, which we already reviewed, but um, I mean, well, basically, but there's more there. Thing with ethics is it's constantly changing on the exam, but if you follow these two diagrams, you'll have the bulk of what uh, most professionals go to for questions and answers in terms of ethical decisions and things. So, yeah, you laugh. I mean, right. Yes, there's lots of them. So, there's lots of them. So you can, I would think, I could probably get something for the next time we're here. But one thing I do know is that there's plenty of studying just with what we did. And then you're going to add to that with another J after. If you want to know more about working with me, then just like you already know how to do it, you did it tonight. But if you end up wanting to work with me in the future to do like the first exam or the second exam, then let me know and I can make an arrangement. I can make an arrangement to go with you for that. I'll put my I'll put my hands all over the keyboard. You'll be like, get out of here. Okay. Yeah. Um, you're breaking up a little bit. Say that again. I was trying to hear it. Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. The bulk of the information is definitely the PowerPoint. Yeah, the PowerPoint. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes. So I'll send you those too. Yep, I'll send you those. So I'll send you this one and the sweet one and oh no. Well, I'll send you everything I have. Let's just put it that way. Yep. So now, it's ASWB. They always like to change the name, even though it's the same boring thing. Um, the main. I don't think I know. I don't think. I think it's just the ASWB. Um, SWB guide to the social work exam. I think that's what it's called. Um, all right, and then once you're done, then you're gonna go down here, and that's it. Yep, very good. All right, so let me know if there's anything else, but you're gonna do great. Yeah. All right, and I will keep going over more and more stuff with you a little at okay. All right. Talk to you later. Have a good night. Bye. Okay, come on, baby. Go. Babies.